messages, and some others were being deleted, and I have everything recorded to say, of course, all our evidence or digital evidence was being erased or changed while I was still bearing my child. And the reality really sinks in when you start to hear these stories, and also when you start to look at the numbers that are terrible, such as we have an average of 13 femicides daily in Mexico, and also the impunity rate is huge, like for regular homicides, and particularly for femicides, the impunity comes to between 80 and 100%. So it's a carnage, we could say. And there's a bigger issue there, that is that all these people that we've learned, there's searching mothers are still looking for their children. There are as many as 153 groups organized trying to find their bodies in the desert or in some other place. What we've learned as a country in 2022 is that when this hacking group called Guacamaya decided to leak the information of the Mexican army, what we mostly learned is that they were, since 2011, illegally surveilling activists, feminists, environmentalists, journalists, which many of them had already disappeared or been killed. And they were treating particularly feminist groups as terrorists. So while Pegasus is still being used, the laws actually have changed in Mexico. So now the government has free pass access to our real-time location. They don't need a warrant anymore. And they are also changing the way we are being identified. Like our identification number is a number for now, but it will be biometric in the coming years. So our iris and fingerprints will be there.
Can you, with that also, maybe introduce how we're talking about the term, not techno-violence, but techno-impunity, which is specifically relevant in Mexico as well?
When we're talking about this impunity that is going on, and we see that the main issue is corruption and how the violence comes directly from the government colluded with the organized crime or private companies, we see how everything is instrumentalized to use technology for actually keep a non-regulation, and especially for them, on how they can use our information. And we know they are using it for getting away with basically enforcing necropolitics, like money is more important than people, land. So that's why techno-impunity is a term that we are using for this particular way of using technology by the state. So we have a lot of issues there, like victims are blamed for their own killings, and we are trying to reflect on how this power is working in contemporary societies, how technology is not acknowledged, or is not acknowledged as black boxes and something you cannot fight against.
And could you also talk about what are some of the responses to these conditions, like grassroots, individuals, organizational response?
It's not only the mothers who are organizing themselves, but we have a lot of NGOs which are very close in this relationship of defending women's lives that are super vulnerable in Mexico, but also how mostly activists are women trying to protect their lands and their children and advocating for justice. So that's why we mainly decided to work with women in Mexico. They are the main actors in this resistance against techno-impunity and techno-violence. But while we were starting to create this trust networks, because it's hard to approach as an artist these groups that have been tortured and vulnerated in many other ways, and used by journalists, or, you know, it's hard to get their trust. But then what we started to develop as a practice, because we understood that their main vulnerability against technology is that they don't know what it is going on with technology, how they are being vulnerated through their cell phones, the way they are sharing or storing their information. So we started by deciding that maybe the practice should build a mutual literacy. We learn from their issues, very particular ways that they have been vulnerated through their technologies, and then we also want to give them some information and create and co-create these alternatives. So talking about this, it has been hard because you need to be very flexible. Many of them, and also us, don't have the resources to make this. But Grom, can you talk about what we do in this part of the practice that is responding particularly to these conditions?
Yes. So yeah, as you mentioned, we're doing these workshops. We refer to them as sessions, mostly because they've become something that we see as cyclic in this practice. It's not something that we can do as a one-off, and then you can talk about a literacy for such an abstract thing, such as technoviolence or techno-impunity, and where to find your body within that. So, like on a very concrete level, so this is like trying to explain how technologies can come out of this artistic practice as well, seeing, in a way, trying to understand what might be what we could call situated technologies in the academic sense, but what is that really in practice? As you mentioned, Anni, we are in these sessions, we are starting with a very sort of basic question, asking everyone there and ourselves, what does it even mean to be safe today in the digital age? And so there's a lot of sharing, a lot of trauma is being shared. It's quite intense. But we also kind of assess what it really entails, maybe technically. And then we are doing together with our team in Mexico, primarily, we're also like doing this type of risk assessment that is kind of like a tool that helps us analyze really what's going on at the organizational level in terms of risk, what's going on for the individuals, the members of the organizations, and those that they represent in the local community. And we bring all that knowledge back to our tech team that we work very closely with, and then start developing ideas for concrete technologies that can be used by a local community. So this is also very important. It's thought of as like a kind of trust building, not just exercise, but like a real fundamental trust building between a community that has to take place before the outcome of a technological design. So it's not the idea of designing a technology that might help, but actually the other way around. And the cycle of this sessional sort of like engagement is like just ongoing. So there's like, if anyone, like people familiar with cyber security for large corporations, military and so on, of course will know that it's a never-ending thing. Those technologies, by all means, have to be maintained on an ongoing basis. So,
what have we really developed there, and why? What's the idea behind it, going beyond this, what we consider generally cybersecurity, but more into safe communications, for instance?
Yeah. So, we've by kind of trying out this approach, we're looking at the way that people use the technologies and not like, like technologies.
As an app itself, yeah.
Yeah, readily put at a specific use for people. So there's a very direct and collective approach that, basically begins with this acknowledgement that we're working with domestic problems, but like looking at that in a scalar sense. So yes, in this case, it's domestic to Mexico, but it's also domestic to the grassroots organization, but it's also domestic to the individual in their home. And and with that, including this analog strategizing rather than just strategizing for the technologies, it's basically putting, as I said, the trust before the idea of what trust might be, like putting the trust building before. And the technologies with that, they are designed most often as serverless, as portable, as something that you're using not to surf the internet. So it's like following the idea is like looking at the uses that we think that these communities need technologies for and need to learn literacies through, is that they are they need kind of like tools. We need to equip one another to use technologies that are non-polluted, such as the internet. We have designed an array of technologies already that we are testing with testing groups through these sessions. In particular, at the moment, we have a main partnership with an organization that both works for women's and environmental rights. We've designed a operating system, Agency OS or AOS, that we are using to contain basically all the tools together as a portable toolkit. And an example of one application that we could share here without revealing too much is that it's something called Ghost Signal, and it's a service that's anonymous, and it's very, very simple, allowing you to do collaborative signal tracking for operations and synchronization. And it works by, for example, you probably would have a host, and then that host creates a board. Yeah, this is the user interface as it looks very, very simply right now. And so you would have like a host, and the host sets up a board of users, and then that host is basically controlling the operation or surveilling it in this sort of sense. The host is then able to see where the members, or when the members, for example, arrive at a destination. The members get linked into this by scanning a QR code, simply, and then they get access to a particular technology or application. And then it's part of it. So it's this type of technology exists in many other uses, but like we're really trying to cultivate within a group, in an organization, like how to actually use it, and then assess in the workshops or the sessions, like what kinds of situations for your organization or in your local setting would that technology be at use. And that's like something that we're like, you can use your imagination, or you can think of like concrete examples. So it's like very, very sort of like basic in that sense.
So the last question would be, how are we planning to sustain the development of these very disposable technologies?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think, first of all, like, there's like this, I actually like what was spoken of in the first presentation, that, we shouldn't actually, how was it, like, it was said that people, speaking of tech workers, people are treated as disposable in the tech industry, and I guess that we're working with like teaching communities to make technologies disposable. On the other hand, and so I think that, I mean, for us, the way we could think of making this, making this practice more sustainable is by maintaining the cycle and bringing in more collaborators, bringing in more partnerships, and then through that practice continue to cultivate these literacies and like inspire people to also, like other people to also perhaps initiate similar projects on their own. And then, of course, it's important also to encourage risk willingness among partners, collaborators, or potential future collaborators, especially from the funders and institutions. And really importantly, to make make everyone, but especially those partners, understand that they too can take part in a deeper assessment of what rights means in our time. And yeah, I guess we're here, generally in our work, we hope to inspire and like to contribute to development of these types of literacies. And this is just an example of Ghost Agency being this immersive research practice, and where both technological designs and art are part of the outcome. And continuing the conversations such as these forums to basically broaden and widen the means of what practicing humanitarian technologies can consist of. So that's something that we are hoping very much to discuss with you guys in the panel.
Okay, let's have a discussion amongst ourselves. Jennifer, you're there? Yeah, all right. So we're here with the five of us, and yeah, I would like to start with you, Heba, because it is really about this kind of double-edged sword of this idea of camouflage. Like, on the one hand, you clearly, traced the colonial side, the history of the camouflage as a technique of power, but obviously it's also, a counter measure. And yeah, we're also here coming together to ask the question, what can we do instead? Can we find a bug in the systems? And is this kind of hiding, techniques of hiding, that in the, of course, the digital civil rights techniques movement, in the hacker movement, has often and for decades been discussed. The right to protect your privacy, to remain anonymous, and so on, right? These are camouflage techniques, if you like. So how do you see this double edge or this two-sided of the topic you presented here, camouflage?
I mean, I like to use the camoufleurs as an example because I think it illustrates that really well. I mean, this idea that camouflage is an incredibly effective technique, but it's problematic because it furthers the kind of problematic political structures embedded within those power structures. And so I guess what I was attempting to do is to say, okay, so then how do we take it one step further? I think camouflage is one strategy, but then but then kind of how do we do it on our own terms without kind of playing the game of the existing structures? I think that's kind of an abstract question at the moment, and I think it doesn't have a simple answer. But I think what the camouflage show, and what I find so interesting about these art schools that propped up around the world wars, is that it was an attempt at sort of using educational tools to really kind of think through practice. So using artistic practice as a means to kind of break apart those problematic structures. And so for me, it's a call of like, how do we do that? How do we kind of take from those historic examples and then take it the next step of really detaching it from the problematic politics it addresses?
Yeah, one can easily imagine what camouflage would mean in the age of drones. However, in our daily lives, we're confronted very much, as the title already says, with algorithms, with AI systems that are, very invasive, and that maybe, but maybe I'm wrong, that cannot be fooled so easily. Or how do you look at that?
But it's not just about the fooling. I think the fooling and the deception is one part of it. I think another important part of it, and this is what my research is really kind of preoccupied with, is really understanding where the data comes from. So in the case of algorithmic warfare, and this is what I tried to illustrate, is that it was really done in this kind of colonial context in very particular geographies, with the Middle East in particular as the backdrop of the development of these technologies that are now being perpetuated and imposing extreme violence on large groups of populations that are using data and images from the inception of the camera and from the start of these technologies. So I think aside from the deception, the other part of it is understanding and informing ourselves where the data comes from, and that it's not just about data collecting today in a contemporary context, but that it goes back through the entire history of visualizing, of photo making, of image making, of technology. So it's important to contextualize it.
Yeah. Now, I would like to take this insight, this knowledge, maybe to you, Jennifer, and I would like to ask, you to respond maybe to this. Is for the migrants, refugees today, is it possible even to hide or to pretend, that they cannot be seen? What counter strategies are there, according to you?
Thank you, and thank you to the other panelists for their presentation. I think refugees and migrants are not visible because they're not made visible. We are not making ourselves invisible, but the state and the state apparatus is trying to make us invisible. It goes back to how even the struggles and achievements that have been acquired over the years are kind of like whitewashed, that it looks like they never existed. And with this, I look at the histories, even for example, of Germany, and how the issues of migrants has really been a topic. And the work the migrants did, for example, the conference that you mentioned in 2017 of people who came here as guest workers and contract workers after the Second World War, and the work they did in terms of building Germany after this, the Second World War. But still, these histories, we had to keep uncovering what has been done over the years. And one of the things that we take very seriously as International Women's Space is documenting the struggles of refugees and migrants, because we realize also in the time of the occupation that the visibility of how our our narratives are told is through the gaze of, through the white gaze, from a colonial perspective, that we need to be saved, that we are victims, that it's all those negative connotations that come with migration or being the other, being othered. So a lot of resistances have been formed, or people are still resisting. Then resistances are what has kept the migrant and the refugees, this constellation of the other people existing, because we always say, it's a statement that we say, if you do not fight, if you don't respect existence, expect resistance. So resistance has been a way of survival for any other person who is impacted, especially by racism and fascism.
Going to the Ghost Agency, Anni and Grow, you seem to put a lot of emphasis on self-organization, on care, on awareness, and you're using also art in that context. Is this, according to you, you know, a tactical response to this very structural, yet you know, in Mexico, very physical violence against women, femicide? So, do you believe that this self-organizational element is now the most urgent way to support women?
I mean, I think it's a starting point. Like, we are not actually organizing them. They are doing it themselves, and we're just introducing knowledge that, and ideas. Yeah. And I think we echo a lot with what Heba was saying in terms of not camouflaging, but hiding in plain sight, you know, like this really idea of becoming ghosts and find some agency in being not completely invisible, but invisible when it's required. And we think a lot of having these multiple identities, because having only one seems to be a very problematic issue right now. Like, if you are putting yourself out there with not the right exhibition or amount of people behind you, you are just deleted. So when it is possible or required to be visible or hidden, and when it's not, I think it's part of it.
Absolutely, I'm glad you're responding exactly that. And also, like, I mean, there's just so much actually, like, also reading literature, going back to literary sources, that we are thankful that also, like, some of the best Black literaries, like, have contributed, and like they are now being read in the West. Thanks for that. Like, so Glissant, The Right to Opacity, is very prominent in the reading backdrop of this project too. And like other, like Spillers, I mean, Legacy Russell, Black Meme. There's so many incredible voices out there that are like, they talk and address in a very inspirational way to how to actually understand how we can be withdrawn today, and like what this even entails in terms of, or like how that connects to an idea of rights. So like that you need, it was also actually brought up in the first conversation, like where is that you know, we need to look inwards and actually know what our own inner space is, and like fix the issues that we have there, but also protect our integrity, protect what like, you know, reconnect with not that identity, but the rest. So there's like a lot of sort of like repression there that is also part of this project. And like here today, we're not really presenting that part. I mean, we have other presentations where there's a lot of more like literary material and artistic sort of like abstraction. So this is actually also interesting for us to be in a. It was great to have the invitation and actually the space to talk about the concrete technologies, because that needs to come out there too. But it's really also important to be able to basically demonstrate that maybe, you know, and this is not only, it's not an advocacy for our own practice, it's like what we advocate for everyone to understand, maybe that more people can practice, not just by the discipline, and not just by reading one book, like, but actually engaging in other ways with understanding, like how we need to invent these rights that we don't have the vocabulary for, and like distinguishing between what's a vocabulary and what is a literacy that is a much more internalized.
Okay, let's end with you, Heba Amin. You're teaching in the art school in Art Academy in Stuttgart. You're a member of the Black Athena Collective. What do you think, you know, when you listen to this and also the speech, of course, earlier, what do you think should be done? What are concrete, you know, next steps? Yes, because this is really. I was asked, you know, to look into inspiring things, to make next steps, because.
Let me tell you the solution to the world's problems.
Well, yes, because again, I think our American colleagues in the first part, it was particularly bleak, and so I would like, you know, to end up with some strategy, tactics, and inspiration.
Well, I mean, I think as my esteemed colleagues have shown, they're doing very kind of active, proactive things, and I think that's extremely important. I think from my perspective as an educator, I think education is a key space, but I think it's also important to acknowledge, again, the power dynamics and the political problems embedded in our institutions. So how do we find and create those other spaces, those other safe spaces where we can educate and think together? I mean, I think also, given the speed at which technology functions, the speed at which media and information, how ubiquitous it is, we're often acting from a very reactive position. And I think there needs to be spaces in which we have to really sit and think together and brainstorm together with how to break apart these systems. And that's not happening in our educational institutions. We see how those are also being dismantled. And so for me as an artist, this is the path that I'm trying to take to address some of these issues. And I'm just grateful that there are other people from other professions who are dealing with them in very real ways.
Yeah. All right. Now we open up to the floor. Please ask your questions to each of the presenters, including, of course, Jennifer, who is with us online from Athens. Please. Yep, there's a first question there.
Yeah, I'd like to try to help the conversation in thinking of strategies and not getting, it's fascinating, all fascinating presentations, but sometimes it gets really complicated, and maybe sometimes the hacking of the technoviolence or resisting technoviolence can be like a, you know, something more simplistic that the people can really grab onto to stop some kind of technoviolence that is happening. And I'll just bring up the example that Jennifer knows well, the project of the Bezahlkarte, and to hack that and to stop that requires something kind of simple, like just thinking in terms of solidarity And there's a project now that you can help people evade this voucher system of money by going and, people who are more privileged in the society can go and give money towards those people's voucher systems, and you take whatever the value of the voucher is that they can only use in supermarkets or whatever, and you use that, and you use it for what you need, but it gives them cash to operate in the society with a lot more freedom. Yeah. And so ideas like that, sometimes it's not really like a huge technological hack. It's something that requires solidarity and community activism, and just fucking do it. Go help these people, and let's organize ourselves that we make these simple hacks, because the technologies are daunting, but sometimes it just takes like pouring a cup of water on a computer server to destroy the data. So let's think of the ways that we can hack the shit and help people as much as possible.
Yes. Next. Yeah. Yes. There's one. Next question, please.
Boop, boop. Hi everyone. Thanks for this beautiful, inspiring conversation. I've recently heard of neurocognitive warfare or cognitive warfare. Has any one of the participants and panelists heard of cognitive justice?
Yep.
And why wasn't this mentioned during this conversation?
Yes. If you have heard...
Could you elaborate on
if you have heard of
importance?
cognitive capitalism, then you've also heard of cognitive justice.
So could you just maybe talk about the cognitive justice and injustices in this brain war?
All right. Any expert here in the hall on cognitive justice? Yes, there is one. You see? This is collective intelligence at work.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you. I'm asking, do you mean like cognitive warfare in the fact of remote neural monitoring and like data extraction from like mind reading and stuff like that? Or like similar to like what Assange tried to... Julian
Please
Assange
talk in the microphone. Because
Julian Assange and Edward Snowden spoke about this, that the military like are... watching people? Is that what you mean by cognitive warfare?
Well, it now becomes quite difficult to hear and to summarize. Okay.
If nobody has heard of the term or doesn't know what it comprises, we can have a discussion later. I would love to spread some news.
Thank you. Next one, please. Who wants to say something about how we can overcome the abstraction, the abstract violence that we here call technoviolence?
So I don't want to answer to this question, but actually I have a very concrete question for Anni, because, I mean, especially speaking about the reality of Mexico, I think big part of the technoviolence also happened at borders and with the borders of US. So I also wanted to ask you, what is the take from that? What would you like to tell us a bit more what is happening there right now, that we know is also used as a testing ground for many technologies, and would be important to bring also your experience from there. That is a technoviolence.
Yes, I think it's a little bit, again, unseen. We only get to learn directly from the activists working in those fields, actually. The thing right now is, my perception, which is very particular, is that we are trying to escape what is going on in the United States, and at the same time we can't, because they want to, with the subject of the organized crime, deploy a lot of different technologies and military force in Mexico, and we consider this an invasion. And the president is very adamant of that. That's not going to happen, but we are not sure because sometimes they do it without any laws or visibility about what is going on in there. In terms, we have worked a lot in the border because this is particularly a very delicate area because we know it's mostly governed by the organized crime. And there are very solid rings of human trafficking. So human trafficking is particularly a way of violence that is controlled or allowed through technology. The way they snatch women out of their homes, it's a lot by making them believe they are going to get a new job or they are in a relationship with someone, and then luring them, especially underage girls, out of their homes and then taking them to the border to work as sex slaves. So this is, it's a very complex system working in the border between Mexico. We also had, or have still, a lot of maquiladoras that are these factories where mostly women work assembling parts that come from China or other parts of the world, and assembling the cars or the technologies themselves, and then passing them through the NAFTA, like a free trade agreement, to United States, which now it's been completely broken because of the tariffs. So we are having a very weird economic violence technology relationship in this area, because also how the, for instance, human trafficking ring is so big there. Well, the reason is because a lot of American people come and Canadian people, or sometimes even European people, come to this part to do whatever they want, which just to think about the stories makes me want to throw up. So they come and they can come completely with impunity, do whatever they want to other people, starting from babies. So that's how it works, actually.
And I just want to add, we didn't say that there was a short video of that was obviously AI manipulated or processed, but that is an excerpt of a video work we did a couple of years ago, and that work is about this.
There's an online question.
Yes, we have
and
an
Christiana
online
is going to read it.
Yes, I'm going to read it. It's a statement and then a question. Violence is not limited to defined periods of war. It is intrinsic to life and embedded in human and natural relations. War merely intensifies violence, but so-called peace periods are not free from it, only less concentrated. Human rights discourses often try to impose absolute definitions of justice, yet can contradict themselves in practice. For example, prisons that claim reintegration while enacting isolation and harm, rights-based frameworks while opening paths for refugees and displaced people can become disconnected from lived realities and power structures when they don't generate new context-specific truths or transformative practices. Question.
Okay.
From your perspective, what forms of despair or limitation might be overcome, not only by those within institutional power, but also by those who create their own values and practices outside of hegemonic systems, in Nietzschean sense, beyond ideological prescriptions or systematized ways, which would also be another metaphysics?
This is someone who's clearly in the middle of writing an essay.
That's a lot.
The question is for all of you.
Yeah, a question for all and none. Yes.
What's the short version?
Who dares?
Yeah. Huh? Can you make like the short version of the question?
Yeah.
No.
I can read it again, sure. From your perspective, what forms of despair or limitation might be overcome, not only by those within institutional power, but also by those who create their own values and practices outside of hegemonic systems? In Nietzschean sense, beyond ideological prescriptions or systematized ways, which would be another metaphysics.
Well, this reminds me of a conversation we had in the beginning of our practice when reading this book about the dark webs. How legality is playing against legitimacy when practice is legitimate but then becomes illegal, or how a law is so making human lives or practices illegitimate. So we don't have an answer. Since in Mexico rules are something very flexible, we play along with that as well.
Well, it's not just in Mexico. I mean, we see the very foundations of laws, international laws, breaking down before our eyes. So to answer the question of how do we overcome that despair, I think that's a very difficult thing to imagine at this point in time. I think we're all in a state of despair at the moment. I think the only hope is in believing in the work that we do and continuing to do it. A very kind of cliche and simple answer, but it's a really dark time.
One last question. There's the mic there. Go ahead.
Yeah, to come back to the greatest goal, right, to change the world. I think thank you so much, and when I hear all this action and way to confront technoviolence, I feel very often we're like patching small wounds, right, where we're solving small problems. That's how it should be done, because very often that's what we can do, and we can act. And all the examples that we heard tonight are very unique individual example of problems of violence that need to be addressed individually. But then when we come back to the biggest question of where are really the responsibility and where does the problem come, it seems to me obvious that often it's about politicians, right? The people who legislate, the people who can create and regulate, and it's true, it's about regulation, right? In the end, finding the right laws that function for justice. And it seems to me, well, we heard in the States, but also in Europe, very often the population puts in power people that don't act in the interest of the majority of the people. So that's the biggest problem, right? How do we solve that? And I was wondering if there's experience in your way of, addressing how politicians are being elected, but also how they have been held accountable for what they legislate. Do we have to change democracy? Do we have to change the system in which politicians are being allowed to be put in power? How to do that? What is better than democracy? What is better than election? What other system could be done? Big question, but that's something to me that really makes me think that's the root of the problem in many cases, right? So I was wondering if you're thinking about that as well, apart from just doing this great job that you're doing and in solving some problem like that. Okay.
All right.
I mean, I think
yes.
I could just that's a really important question too. I think that this project, this practice is geopolitical. The funding as if it just arrives now, but currently and thankfully, is conditioned by one of us being a European. In this case, Danish. Yep. It's funded by something called the Nordic Culture Fund, but also actually and like directly from the Foreign Ministry and the Cultural Ministry in Denmark that had this strategic call for institutions to work with technology and the democratic conversation. And so it's linked up, and so this is to say that there is a quite conscious and quite strategic action involved in our practice as well. And I think without that we wouldn't be able to have equipped what we're doing, and we are really aware that we need to be able to sustain that, and actually also like what we do with these questions also kind of like helping us seeing that, you know, that type of work can never exist without it also being political, or learning like how to voice certain conditions and certain initiatives politically. So this is just to say, how does it affect, like, I mean, I don't know, like, if any politician will eventually acknowledge that this work, wow, that just has to be widely implemented. But actually to speak a little bit to the hope aspect of it, I think that we couldn't be doing this if we didn't believe, if we didn't have some kind of hope. It's not like an art project that only wants to be an artistic outcome at all, and the interest is really like to move both, and then like maybe also, I think, okay, so this is like, again, I can't speak on behalf of the politician layer, but like you're talking about accountability. I don't think politicians are the only ones that needs to be accountable. I think that we all need to reassess what accountability even entails, especially if we want to be an opposition at all. And I think that like there's so much activism out there. It's really great, but I also think we need to assess what activism really is today, and what it is then again when we speak about technologies and technoviolence and so on and so forth. So that's like a really, and politicians need to know of that, for sure. I would just totally agree. Yeah.
All right, and I'll leave it here. Maybe Jennifer, do you want to?
Yeah, maybe I can just, I can add in on the issue of politicians, because for us in the migration context, the fact that we cannot vote then is also something that excludes us from this approach of politics of power. But again, the issue of migration is being weaponized and instrumentalized to perpetuate fascism. So yes, we're in a very difficult situation, and I think the most important is to call for accountability on people who have the power to vote. Because then, how do we explain how the right wing is on the, is really going up? If everybody's thinking, okay, it's not right, but then numbers don't lie.
All right, we'll have to end it here. Jennifer, thanks so much for attending from Athens. Heba, Anni, and Gro, thanks a lot. We'll give the floor to Tatjana to close today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the projects and also, I would say, inspiring vision that you brought. So we have to recognize as well that the reality is quite tough and difficult at the moment, but still I believe that we have the strength also to imagine something different. So I saw that this happened in this panel, and so I want to thank all of you also for bringing some alternative in a sense, in different scale, but still thinking all together how to we can imagine this moment differently. And I think in a sense, this is our strength. And I hope that we will go on with this kind of discussion also tomorrow. I'm actually sure this will happen. And so tomorrow I want to tell everyone we will be again here at 4. And we will have a panel called Exploited, Extracted, and Erased, the Global Logic of Big Tech, with Rimas Geyer, Sarah Chiston, Leah Queller, and Safag Naim, moderated by Neil Hudson. So this is also a very important perspective to understand what is the power of big tech, what they are doing both virtually in the AI, clouds, sphere, at the same time also discussing on campaign of harassment on Meta and social media, and then we will discuss about the so-called crypto cities that are currently built in Central America, and finally we will also speak about the situation of DC Congo and Palestine, because I think maybe today we didn't speak enough about Palestine and Gaza, and I think also it's very important to remember what is happening right now there. That is, I would say, the apotheosis of technoviolence in this moment. And then we will have a keynote that is also very close to our heart, called Secrecy, Surveillance, and Grassroots Resistance. We will bring together former FBI agent and whistleblower Terry Albury, that is also speaking for the first time outside US here, so it's a very important moment for us. And Lindsay Billing, that is a wonderful investigative journalist and photographer that at the moment is in Afghanistan. She has worked a lot on Afghanistan and also Iraq. Yeah, so I hope everyone will come, and I still remind everyone also that you could become a member of the Disruption Lab, also speaking about, you know, collecting our strength together, and also reminds about Untold magazine and their table if you want to have a look. And I say thank you to all of you, thank you for being here, and see you tomorrow.